Who hasn't looked back on the year and thought, man, what did I even do this year? I mean, you were busy, you were stressed, but you can't even actually list like a handful of accomplishments that you've completed in the past 12 months. Some of us have done it often enough that we stop even trying to look for them altogether. It's easier on our brain to just not ask the question. We don't have to damage our ego if we just don't even ask, what did we accomplish this year? Because if we dare reflect back on it, if we dare ask, did I make any progress? We're sure we're going to be disappointed. So I did this thing years ago, right? It was the year that I formally got promoted to lead leaders in a corporate setting. And looking back now, I can see that I accomplished a ton that year. But at the time, I was sure that I did nothing. I was sure I impacted no one. Now, the year I was promoted, I implemented a new way of measuring success. My team grew and united whole groups that were in different locations across the country that had never worked together before. I was influencing and engaging multiple levels of employees and leaders. We implemented new compliance processes too. We met these stringent expectations that were put forward by the state and federal governments. And we created collaborative, efficient processes. And those united all of the teams that intermixed within this department. Now, that's just what I can remember now, all these years later, right? All these years removed. But at the time, I felt like nothing was done. It was because of some thing that was in my brain. It wasn't some major life moment. It wasn't some, loss of focus or a factor that was outside of my control. This was all me. Now, I know what you're thinking. Maybe it was you, Kelly, but it certainly isn't me. It isn't my fault. And that's fair. I get it. We don't want to believe that we're doing something that negatively impacts ourselves or the people that we're trying to help. So we decide in our brains that it must be someone else. It must be something else's fault. And if we were just left up to our own devices, everything would be great. We would accomplish every goal and we would take adequate credit for them as well. The fact is, though, we're typically our own biggest roadblock. It is us throwing up our own self sabotage that keeps us from hitting our goals. For me, it was cognitive dissonance. Now, I'm going to get into that in a minute, but yours may be cognitive dissonance. It might be a whole array of other things that are happening inside your head that are causing you to self sabotage. So, if you are curious what that is for you, I want you to click the link below so that you can figure out what your personal brand of self sabotage is, because I promise you, we all have them. All right, so let me break down mine. Cognitive dissonance is having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes that relate to behavioral decisions or attitude change. Let me say that again. Cognitive dissonance is having inconsistent thoughts and beliefs and attitudes as they relate to your behavioral decisions, so what you do, and your attitude change, so where you want to go. All right? So it's an inconsistency in how you're thinking and what you're doing. Now, it means that even though you might be doing the work like I was, you don't feel like you deserve the credit, which is how I felt. And so you dismiss it, which is what I did. I couldn't relate anything that I was achieving. So I just assumed that it was either a fluke or by someone else's doing that it actually worked. Now, for me, again, looking back, I can pinpoint it to a very specific reason. Someone made a comment that I just couldn't let go of. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever heard a comment by someone else, or maybe it was just a face that they made or something that you perceived about them that you then decided that they thought this? Well, for me, they did say it out loud. And so it really just got stuck in my head. So now let me set the stage. The promotion that I was referring to, it happened really early in the year. Okay? I think it was probably in February that it formally like took effect. And there were a number of other internal candidates. And to make matters worse, many of those candidates were actually on teams that would now report through me once I got the promotion. So people who were on the team, which I wasn't, had applied for this role and didn't get it. And I was kind of brought in diagonally from a different team. All right. And so now they were reporting to me. There were at least five people who were directly reporting to me that had tried to get the job that I was in. So it is no wonder that they had some negative thoughts about it, that they weren't really big fans of the fact that I got the job because they had tried to get it. And wouldn't you feel sort of justified in that if you were already on the team, if you were already doing the work that now someone else was going to be leading? Now, you might feel justified in it. I might have felt justified in it, but it's that next step. It's the decision that this person made to make a comment about it that compounded it. So her direct quote was, so talking about me, she just puts on a short skirt and gets anything she wants. Ouch, right? I mean, it was a lie, but it still got stuck in my head. And honestly, it just couldn't have been further from the truth. I was working my tail off. Before I got this role, I had been working my tail off, not even realizing that this was an option. And then after I got the role, I continued to work like crazy to relate to and be able to support everyone who was reporting to me. Now, regardless of my outfits at the time, I was working so hard to make things better for these employees, my employees, the outside employees that didn't report up through me, and our customers. Now, I am pretty naturally charismatic. I was also much younger at the time than any of my peers. Did those 2 things work for me and help me influence and help people make decisions? Probably, yeah, probably. Probably just as often as they actually worked against me. Because being younger can also discredit you. Being charismatic can make people suspicious of if you have the depth and the substance to back it up. So, did it help me in some cases? Sure. I'm absolutely sure it did. It probably also worked against me just as much. And even though I knew that that comment wasn't true, I still second guessed every single move that I made. I always wondered if my success was just built on a house of cards, if I was actually accomplishing things because I had the substance to back it up or if people really were giving me my way because of my looks or the way that I dressed. Now, the other problem was even if it was all substance, how many other people perceived it just the way that employee did? Now, all of that was running in the back of my head. All of that was discrediting all of my accomplishments. All of that was probably holding me back from doing everything that I could. And by the end of the year, it was as though every accomplishment had this stain on it. I spent 10 months working on this role and for the people who reported to me. And I was questioning every bit of it because I let that thought stick in my head. Now, my thoughts, my beliefs, my attitudes, they were related to decisions and actions that I was taking, but they were misaligned, related, but not supporting. It was as though there were two sides of my brain and they were just pulling each other apart. The promotion I got, it must not have been earned, right? Like that's what was going through my head. I must not have earned this. All of the processes that I improved, those must have just been a waste of time. The compliance changes that I made, maybe that just got lucky. I couldn't have been because of me. It couldn't have been my doing because all I had to go off of was my looks. Now, you might be listening to this, you might relate to this, you might be nodding along and thinking, yeah, and that was her fault. That was that other person's fault for saying that to me, right? So, why is this self sabotage? Now, I want to go back to where I was in the beginning. This is just my example. And no, it wasn't her fault. She probably shouldn't have made that comment. However, it wasn't her that was holding me back. I held me back because I held on to those words. I gave that so much power. I let it fester in my brain and I used it to just erode everything that I had been working on. That is why it is self sabotage. She didn't sabotage me. She made a snide comment. I used that comment to sabotage me. Now, you you might be stuck on something different, right? You might be stuck between being grateful for where you are, who you are, what you have, and the potential of what you could be. You might be self-sabotaging because you're so overwhelmed by everything that needs to get done, so you choose just the tiniest detail that you can have complete control over and put all of your effort into that one thing. Maybe you have so many balls in the air, you have taken on so much that it's now just unrealistic that anything would get done well. Maybe this is one of your examples of how you're self sabotaging, or maybe it's something completely different. The truth is, it's not the person, it's not someone who gave you the assignments. It's not the fact that you don't have control over everything. It's not these outside circumstances that are sabotaging you. It is your response to them. Let me say that again. It is not these outside factors. It is not these people. It's not the person who makes the rude comment. It's not your boss who gives you all of the jobs. It's not your coworkers who assume that you'll help with everything that they're doing. It is your response to those actions and words. And just like I responded to the issue with that employee by letting the thought fester, you might be responding to those things by procrastinating the important work and prioritizing something that's really trivial. You might be agreeing to take on everything, knowing that it's just not possible for you to do it well. Now, you can move the hurdle. You can be proud of the progress that you have made this year and then every year that follows. But the first step in doing that is figuring out what's holding you back. And so, hopefully, through this video, you are recognizing that it is your response. It is something that you're doing that's actually holding you back. And if you are to that point, if you are like, okay, maybe it's me, maybe there's something I can do to impact this, then I want you to take this 2-minute quiz. Again, click down in the link below for your personal brand of self sabotage, and you can figure out what it is for you and get some helpful tips on how to fix it. So now, now that we know the answer, right? Now that we know that it's something that we're doing, I want you to be able to answer the "Did I make progress?" question now that you're brave enough to even ask it, right? So, once you've identified what that self sabotage is for you, what's holding you back, then I want you to take these 3 steps that will actually build on what we talked about last week. So, if you were here for the video last week, we talked about how you can make your mark in 2025 and what 3 things you can do in just a few minutes a day that can help propel you forward. If you missed that one, go back and watch that video as well, because it's going to talk about listing small wins that you've had in the past week. And now that we're looking at our year in totality, 2024 in totality, you'll be able to build on what you did last week, build on that momentum that you built, and you will be able to really take inventory of what progress you did make this year. All right, so what are the 3 steps? First, you are going to audit your calendar. So start in the beginning of the year. Go back in your calendar, whether it is paper or online, Outlook, Google, whatever it is, and go back to January, work your way forward and look for the meetings, the time blocks, the task list, the different things that would indicate what you were working on. Even if you're not listing them as wins yet, even if they just feel like stuff right now, they're not things you would brag about. It's just things that you did. That's okay. Just list them all out. I want you to write them out on a sheet of paper or in your notes app, something. I want them in black and white writing so you can see them. Okay. Then, number two, you are going to compare to your list of goals. So, take out your goal list from New Year, last year, or from the strategy meeting, corporate wide, whatever your organization strategic plan was, or your goals in your career, right? Take that and list those out so that you can start drawing lines from what you worked on to what your goals were, right? Or what the organization goals were, however you want to do it. But I want you to physically be able to line them up. All right. Third one, you are going to rewrite what you did in terms of wins. So, for all of the work that you supported, the goals that you worked on, the strategic initiatives, anything that has a line to them, I want you to rewrite those efforts, that work, those projects, rewrite them as a win. So, rather than simply stating what you did, add the value that it added to the organization. Okay. So go through, add that all in. That is where I want you to start. For some of you, that will prove very difficult. Even writing out what you did as a win is going to feel hard. If that's the case, I have a little bit of a twist on this process. If that is still a difficult way for you to even determine if you made progress. Okay. So let's start again. If you are struggling with this and that seems like a bit much to even write anything out as a win for you, first of all, that might be how you're self sabotaging. You're seeing that it wasn't perfect and you're not counting those as wins. So, again, I want to just encourage you to go take that quiz and figure it out if perfectionism is perhaps holding you back. But again, we're going to go through and audit our calendar and compare those and line them up with the goals that you had or the organizational goals that you were set. Okay. Then the twist is that for that brag list, for that list of wins, you are going to attach somebody else's name to it. All right. We're not bragging about ourselves now, we're bragging about someone else. That's so much easier for us, right? It's so much easier to brag up our best friend or someone that we really respect, honor, admire, a mentor of ours, than it is to attribute any of those successes or wins to us. So I want you to, as you're writing out those wins, put somebody else's name to it and then read them out loud like you're talking about your best friend. And I don't care if you read them to someone, you can read them to your best friend if you want to, or you could just read them to the bathroom mirror. But I want them in writing and I want you reading them out loud so you can see and hear everything that was achieved, even if you had to put somebody else's name on the top of it. Okay. So if I was going to rewrite mine from that past time in my life, it might sound a little something like this. Molly was so good at what she did, right? Because I'm taking my name out of it. This is not about me anymore. This is about some fictitious person that I can give these achievements to and I can brag them up a bit. So Molly was so good at what she did. She was promoted straight into middle management in her 20s. Most people are still just figuring out what they want to do, but she was out there making such big strides that she created her own dream job. All right. That is not something I ever would have said about myself at that time, right? That is not a way that I would have talked about myself. But if I'm talking about Molly, then no problem. I can give all of that credit to Molly. Molly did great. Now, that just goes to show that that cognitive dissonance is still there. It still gets to me from time to time. If I'm honest, I kind of feel like I still have a foot in both of these camps. One that's saying, yes, I'm successful and I can own these wins. And a second that's just second guessing those moves. I would bet that you are somewhere on that spectrum as well. There is some amount of self sabotage that is happening at every level because we can't see far enough ahead of ourselves. The difference is when you have a practice like this, where you look at what you did, what you're working towards, and how they connect, you are better able to step fully into that identity and see that for yourself so that you can switch it on. You can become that person and figure out what she would do next, how she would describe herself. So, what is holding you back from recognizing your achievements? Maybe you aren't stuck in cognitive dissonance. Your personal brand of self sabotage could be entirely different. It might be the exact reason you don't have as many achievements on your list as you would like to have, because it could be keeping you from actually getting the work done. So, do yourself a favor and take the quiz to determine your personal brand of self sabotage, because there is only one way to get out of your own way, and that's to recognize that you are the one standing there. All right, I know that this video was a little bit more tough love than we often do, but I hope that this was beneficial for you. I hope that this supports you in stepping forward into this new identity that you are gaining momentum for in 2025. If you know someone who needs these steps, who needs to take a little more pride in the work that they've done, then I can't imagine a better video for you to send to them. Share this video with them so that they too can really step into that identity and take ownership of everything that they've accomplished. All right. I will talk to you in the next one.